Sunni and Shia Muslims explained in 7 minutes. Let's go. Sunni Muslims make up the majority of the Muslim population and around 85 to 90% of the world's Muslim population, whereas Shias only make up 5 to 10% of the Muslim world. Shias are the majority group in countries such as Iran and Bahrain, though there are groups of Shias in other countries as well. Despite conflicts arising in the modern era, Sunni and Shia Muslims have lived alongside each other in peace for most of history. To understand the origin of the Sunni Shia split, we'll have to go back in time for a short history lesson. This won't be comprehensive and it's just a short summary. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away, he'd left a kingdom of roughly 100,000 Muslims in the Arabian Peninsula, and the question of who would inherit this kingdom is what caused the Sunni-Shia divide in the first place. Shia Muslims literally began as a movement after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's death. The Party of Ali, or Shiatul Ali, claimed that Ali, son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and husband to his daughter Fatima, was the rightful successor to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as his closest living male relative, and could carry on the Prophet, peace be upon him's bloodline. When the Prophet Muhammad died without a male heir, he never clearly stated who his successor should be, says Leslie Hazelton, author of After the Prophet, the epic story of the Sunni-Shia split in Islam. This was important because by the time he died, he had basically brought all the tribes of Arabia together into a kind of confederation that became the Ummah, the people or nation of Islam. However, the majority of Muslims at the time chose the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's close companion Abu Bakr to succeed him instead. He died only 2 years later and was succeeded by the caliphs Umar and Uthman, both of whom were instrumental in bringing Islam to the wider world, with their armies conquering places such as Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Iraq and Persia, and penetrating the North African coast. Caliph Uthman was killed in 656 by a mutinous group of Muslims who then offered the caliphate to Ali. He accepted and became the 4th Caliph of Islam. Following this, for reasons I won't go into just now, a bitter power struggle erupted between Sunni and Shia Muslims at the time. At stake was not only the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's religious and political legacy, but also a great deal of money in the form of taxes and tributes paid by the followers of Islam at the time. This combination of money and power would only grow. Ali was assassinated in 661 after a 5-year caliphate that was marred in civil war and struggle. In the end, the caliphate passed to Muawiyah, and Ali's sons Hassan and Hussein were denied what they thought was their legitimate succession, and would go on to lead future attempts and battles in an effort to regain the caliphate. The Battle of Karbala and its lasting significance. In 681, Ali's son Hussein led a small group of followers and Muslims and family from Mecca to Karbala in present-day Iraq to confront the caliph at the time, Muawiyah's son Yazid, whose legitimacy Hussein rejected. A massive Sunni army led by the Caliph Yazid of the Umayyad dynasty, a Sunni caliph, awaited Hussein and his followers. What followed was a 10-day standoff with various mini-struggles in between. In the end, Hussein was killed and his head brought to Damascus as a tribute to the Sunni caliph. It was obviously intended by the Umayyads to put a definitive end to all claims to leadership of the Ummah as a matter of direct descendants from Muhammad, says Hazelton of Hussein's death and the death of all surviving members of Muhammad's family at Karbala. But of course it's not what happened. Instead, Hussein's martyrdom at Karbala became the central story of Shia tradition and is commemorated yearly as Ashura, the most solemn date on the Shia calendar. This is a yearly event for Shia Muslims marked with mourning rituals and passion plays reenacting the martyrdom. Some Shia men and women dress in black and parade through the streets, slapping their chests and chanting in grief. Similarities. Number 1, the Quran. All Sunni and Shia Muslims accept the divine origin of the Holy Quran. They both use hadith, although Shia Muslims tend to favour a certain collection of hadith over others. They both believe in the 5 pillars of Islam: belief in the oneness of God, praying 5 times a day, paying charity or zakat, fasting for 30 days in the month of Ramadan, and in Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage. But there are some practical differences. Firstly, hadith. Some Sunni accepted hadith are less favoured by Shia Muslims. For example, hadiths narrated by Aisha are not given the same sense of authority as those by other companions because of her opposition to Ali. The Shia give preference to hadith narrated by Ali, Fatima and their close associates. Sunni Muslims tend to consider hadith narrated by all companions equally. Secondly, Salah. Whereas Sunni Muslims pray 5 times a day in separate times, Shia Muslims can combine their 5 daily prayers with each other in order to pray with less frequency throughout the day. For example, a Shia Muslim could pray 3 times a day: Fajr on its time, combine Zuhr and Asr together at one time, and combine Maghrib and Isha together at another time. Shia prayers also differ in that they can often be identified by small tablets of clay from a holy place, often Karbala, on which they place their forehead while bowing in prayer. Thirdly, names. Shia Muslims are sometimes recognizable by their names, which are often derived from the family of Muhammad, peace be upon him. In particular, the names Fatima, Zainab, Ali, Abbas, Hassan and Hussein are most common among Shia Muslims, although they are also used among Sunni Muslims as well. However, names such as Abu Bakr, Uthman, Umar, Aisha are commonly used as names for Sunni Muslims but are rarely, if ever, used for Shia Muslims. The majority of Sunni and Shia Muslims do not let their differences divide them. Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, the world's oldest Muslim university and historically a Sunni institution, recognizes both Sunni and Shia in its curriculum. In many parts of the world, Sunni and Shia Muslims live together harmoniously and have even intermarried. Fourthly, the day of Ashura, the day of mourning for Shia Muslims, where they commemorate the death and passing of Hussain, the son of Ali. As mentioned before, this is the most solemn day in the Shia calendar as they commemorate this death. It's not uncommon to find Shia men and women parading the streets, holding their hands to their chest, remembering the death of Ali's son Hussein. Sunni Muslims do not take part in the day of Ashura. Despite the long-running nature of the Sunni-Shia divide, the fact that the two groups coexisted in relative peace for centuries on end suggests that their struggles have less to do with religion and more to do with money and power. Unfortunately, the conversation today around Sunnis and Shia Muslims mostly centers around the conflicts and tensions that are rampant in the Middle East today. But the biggest thing I've learned in creating this video is the value of unity and the dangers of division between us. No matter which group you identify with, we all believe in the oneness of Allah, the importance of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his Sunnah, the 5 pillars of Islam and the Quran, and I pray that Allah encourages us to bring peace, love and mercy to ourselves and to each other. Ameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for any mistakes I made in this presentation. Jazakallah khair for your time. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum.